Hello. Today I wanted to talk about the coronavirus once again as it's all over the media. I've heard some interesting reports. Well, I guess I'm hearing that some of the information that I've already had an intuition of and then been able to confirm at a certain point early on that I had mentioned to some people at the time of this happening in Wuhan is now making it to some sort of mainstream where people are starting to talk about what's happening. Of course, the first big articles start coming out about the 5G and the Wuhan connection, and how that first city to do the rollout in the world, the first city to do a full rollout. I know they had other rollouts somewhere in other parts of Asia, but this was full rollout, and so all these little mini towers put all over the city. Now we don't have this type of 5G here, even though they say 5G, etc. We don't have this concentration here yet, but um, putting all of this 5G or 4G in America, I guess you could say, but putting all these little mini microwave, they're different from the other waves, which are a longer frequency. These need very short distances to be able to function, and they're much more powerful, and they can even pass through different elements that the other waves cannot. They have they're not good at passing through. They need to be closer, but what passes through is much more destructive. It's almost like being in a microwave. And so, so this type of technology being scattered all around right now, and actually I've even heard the reports of them proceeding to install 5G despite the coronavirus. Like this is going to keep going. So yes, and some of the studies, some of the people that are just coming out, friend of a friend, someone I know well, Tom Cowan, and he was speaking about this, put this out there, that sometimes the metals in the body and the magnetism that's attracted through the vaccines and other things also creates greater um, more attraction to this type of problem, meaning you attract more of this electricity, or this electricity has a worse effect on your body because of all the metals in it. And the less those metals are in there, the better that the body functions. So the vaccines, having all this aluminum and everything, this is one other element of the aluminum. And that's a really good thing to say, because there's some truth to that, and there's also truth to the fact that flu symptoms can very much mimic exposure to 5G, and over time the cancers can mimic that. It depends on how long the exposure is, and depends on the person. Certain people may fall out quicker, but there's a lot of 4G towers here in California, and you can get on antennasearch.com and find out how close they are to you. And so some of these towers that are very important that you can see, that's the nature of them. You have to kind of be able to see them. And so they kind of hide them sometimes. But when you can see these really intense structures, and if you're close to one of those, like my girlfriend was, you have to move out. I mean, if you're within 0.23 miles, which is what is more of an established perimeter based on a few different studies, one from Israel, and they'd come up with like this 400 meter radius. And I don't know if that has to do completely with the fact that the waves, which are magnetic in nature, that are closer. When you have electrical waves coming from an electrical unit, you have a certain type of magnetic wave which is closer to the unit and less escapable, so to speak, by any sort of protection system. There is some that work, but and the further you get away, the more it's the RF waves which are going to be dominant as the danger. Now, that's not always true, because there's other type of magnetic devices and things like that, but I'm talking about general electricity and certain things. So when you get really close to these towers with the magnetic component plus the RF, you can really turn it up how quick this can happen. So she was within 0.10 miles of the tower. So her deep sleep had been destroyed over the last 3 years that she was there, and she noticed it. Once I started to talk to her about it, I brought a meter over there. I recommend a tri-field meter. It's not like the best. It's about $200, but it's good enough to be able to get you to figure out what's going on. And So there is a way to protect yourself from this, and nobody talks about that. Everybody talks about take vitamin C and walk on the ground and stay earthed and stuff. And yes, it's true to be in a bottom floor apartment is the best because you are on the ground. So there's no waves coming from below you. So if you lay on the floor, well, you're the furthest away from the waves you could be, and so that does not always protect you because there's Wi-Fi all around you, your neighbors, and there's all sorts of other things. But it does protect a lot, and even the body turned upside down like that. I mean, she slept for a long time upside down on that bed, like on top of on the stomach, and I told her you were probably protecting your ovaries. This was like we were a natural. She never wanted to sleep another way. Now she's back to sleeping a normal way that she's in a new house. So these things are realities, and the problem with a lot of I wanted to come on and speak because I sense that even though we're getting consciousness around these things, nobody's proposing the proper solutions. Possibly because a lot of people haven't lived those solutions like I have and have incorporated them, not like some maniac with a tinfoil hat, but have to be able to incorporate those solutions in a streamlined way and integrated way where they look nice and everything, it's invisible and no one knows. And so, for example, you have to have a canopy over your bed, and it's made from a certain type of fabric, electromagnetic fabric. It's about $1,000 because they're usually made with silver. A certain percentage, 2% or something, is made of silver, and it's that silver, grid that's been laid out there, which is going to bring back a reflective state and not allow some of those waves to get in. I mean, it's not a perfect solution, so always you get about 10% or something coming in, but you reduce it so far down that you can overcome it, you see. So the body is not completely old world natural like we think. It actually can handle certain radiation and certain mercury and certain things. Mercury will pass right through you if you don't have a leaky gut, if the enterocytes are intact. And so there's things that the body can handle that go into more advanced areas of quasar star power, stuff we never thought about that the body can handle, but it has to be able to do it in a certain way. There has to be a certain level of consciousness to keep the exposure down to where we can maintain healing power, and recovery power and stuff like that. And that's possible if we knock the beast out 90%. We're not going to get it down to zero. So don't think it's all a scam because your cell phone works in your sleep sanctuary, because that's not how this works. Now, the reason is because a lot of the technologies we use are turned up. So to get Wi-Fi in all these apartments, you would only need like 1 bar. Everybody would only have 1 bar. But the problem is they're all at 5 bars, and that's because they're shooting it way beyond what's needed. And so this applies to everything, all the waves. Everything they're doing is going way beyond. It's going into health danger, and it could have been tempering of the sword. It could have been controlled down to a human level where it could work. Now, it also could be used using fiber optics. There could be stands that you would pass, and then those would upcharge your phones, and there would be more staccatoed ways of doing this in a perfect world where we master technology and it's not destroying our health. There's still a way to do some of these technologies in the right way, but they're not being done right, and so they're being done abusively. And maybe that's what this coronavirus / 5G / wake up, CBD and all these other wake up calls of natural health and things are coming through, because we need to start breaking through the paradigm and realizing that there's dangers here, not only in vaccines and 5G, which are vaccines are probably the biggest, because that's so internal to us. It takes the most amount of opposition in ourselves to overcome it, because we've already vaccinated our children, for example. And instead of wanting to look at that, the harm that was done, and move forward, we just kind of don't want to look at that, and so we keep that. So that's the hardest one. It's the hardest one because it's so ubiquitous and it's so everywhere, and we've done it for so many years. And so I'm not saying that antigen vaccines are bad, antigens as that part of the vaccine. No, there's some truth about stimulating the immune system, and so there's some truth there, but that truth has been completely clouded into a modern madness of aluminum delivery, and even when they don't say mercury's in there, they use mercury to wash the vaccine and clean it out, or whatever they call that, and there's some traces or what. So all these metals are getting into the body, and they're usually micro aluminum. They're not macro, nano, which can come in through the eyes and everything else in the air if that's being sprayed from above or wherever. But this is macro aluminum, which is not intended to come out of the body. It takes a lot of work to get it out of the body. including not just CBD that can help, but you need homeopathy, Sankaran level homeopathy. You need a certain type of homeopathy, which is helping to heal the spiritual side. There has to be a certain level of consciousness to start pushing this stuff out, and a certain type of dilation that comes through the body when there's no more deficiencies, magnesium. And the threefold remedy that I always recommend, which is the transdermal magnesium, Zextine inside, in blue glass bottles, found at theheartoftradition.com, and then maybe go over to Radiant Life and pick up the K2 emu oil and the fermented cod liver oil. These three elements I call the threefold remedy, and this helps the body to heal very quickly out of the deficiencies that we're all in. So you can dose up and dose up on these and pull yourself out of these deficiencies over a 6 month to a year period in pretty short order. And so this is powerful. I mean, even the first month or two can already bring up a lot of healing forces. But so these things are needed. There's a lot of this pandemic stuff, and the reason I don't go fully on it's all 5G and that's what's causing this, and that there's no virus or none of this, is because it's not that simple. It's just like anything else. It's a mixed bag. And so it's a combination of, I don't know what happened during the Black Plague. I know that it was bad, but there is people, conspiracy or controversial people who have said that it was caused by anthrax in the water supply or food supply or whatever. And that anthrax resembles a lot of the same black sores and that kind of open skin that cuts like that. Like it had the same sort of effects. And so I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that that there is possibilities that things that we call one thing can also be another thing, or a combination of two things that hit at once. And that's another thing we don't see coming sometimes. It's like a trifecta of evil, or a trifecta of sorts that's coming all at once. And that's why we don't see it. So we have to be careful when something can be engineered even against us, which has a three-pronged visualization that's needed to understand it. And so that's what I think is happening with the 5G thing. Is it's just one part of that with the air particles, and that's also a big thing that was happening in Wuhan. There was huge smog riots happening, in Wuhan all throughout the year. Like they were getting worse and worse. These smog protests, people were protesting something that was in the air. So they go super hard in the air with these particles and contaminants that destroy the immune system, and then they go super hard in the air and the thyroid, and then they go super hard in the air with the waves. And so it's a combination of all that, lowering the immune system, and then they're able to get their disease, their bioterror stuff to fit the paradigm. Because you see, God doesn't work that way. God doesn't it's just like the AIDS virus. It's all untruth. The whole story of AIDS, there's no AIDS and HIV connection. They never were connected. And HIV is not even transmittable, sexually or whatever, maybe through drug use or whatever, or, and even hepatitis, this is like totally transmittable, but I mean, like it heals and it goes away, like the one in the hospitals. That one, it does have some infection rates, but HIV and AIDS, there's no connection between the two. You can look it up. You can look up the hundreds of diseases that are called AIDS now, like sarcoma and pneumonia, different types of levels of immune challenge that now we just put in the AIDS pocket to build up those stats or whatever. And a lot of it has to do with Africa and wasting disease and all of these being declared as the numbers for AIDS now, because we can't find any more in America because somehow that all just died out. And so, and there's a lot of stuff to be said about the medicine that people took and how that made them sicker, AZT. And so without going too far into every single subject, you just have to know that this whole virus connection scam that they've been trying to pull on us, from HIV on down to all the different coronavirus strains, have been worked on for years. One of them's found in the common cold. So how easy it is for them to fudge the numbers up with their testing. And so they've been working on these things for a long time. The Gates Foundation put this together with the PureBright Foundation. They invested in them. They came up with a sort of patented coronavirus, not vaccine, but strain. And so they released this on the world. Did they use China as the starting point? Possibly, in order to not be able to blame China in a way. That was probably a smart move, or to cover their own traces. I mean, if I was Bill Gates, I definitely wouldn't I definitely wouldn't try to, have it come back to me. So I would definitely try to put that in there. I would definitely try to put that off in China so that way when that comes back to me, we can, blame them or whatever. It's like I'm out, And so you could say, well, how would they go along with it? And it's like, well, they'll go along with it. They got the Communist Party is ready to crack in China. People are waking up through capitalism and some of those policies there. People are waking up to that communist stuff, and so they need a crisis just like France needs a crisis, just like Canada and everywhere else that has a bad system in governance and an economic collapse happening, or a bad system of governance, one or the other, or both. They need to stay in power. And so a crisis is great. Like Macron in France, he'd love a crisis, and I think he's going to get one before it's over. And so he's trying his best. I don't know if it'll fall in his favor. I definitely don't think so, because it's one thing for you to be Napoleon, but it's another thing for you to be Napoleon 7. It's like it's a little bit watered down at this point. So I think the French are ready to wake up, and so are the Americans on all of this. So it's not just 5G. It's not just the air. So with the air, you need an IQ air purifier in your room when you sleep every night, and you could stay in that room often if you work from home and you do stuff like that. Keep that air clean, and you can let air come in. I let air come in through my window, but I have it barely opened, and I have a heavy, thick blanket. Curtain in front of that window, and so air comes in in slow little waves, and then but where I sleep, that air is coming straight to me from the purifier, so I'm getting always that air to a certain degree, especially at sleeping time. So you have to have an IQ air. You can't get these cheap ones. You got to get the right one. That's the problem, because it filters down to 0.03 microns instead of 3 microns. So that's a big difference. And so you have to cover the air. You have to cover the 5G. Well, at least we don't have 5G here in America to that degree, but we do have stronger 600 hertz 4G waves that they're calling 5G. They're marketing it as that from T-Mobile and other companies. So we're just getting more intensification. Most of those intensifications you can see. You can see the towers, or you can trace them through the internet, websites, and things like that, or even visibly. Some of the 5G look like these little birdhouse kind of little mini towers that they put on top of other existing structures like telephone poles and everything like that. So that's easy to trace, but that's not really happening to a high degree yet here in these dense areas, but it could be coming soon, the rollout. So in order to protect yourself, 5G might be another demon, but as far as where we're at now, without these close proximal microwaves, the reflective nature of these type of metals and silver and that fabric that I told you about, these things work. These knock it down. They knock it 90% down. And so a bed canopy, I put some nickel ripstop kind of paper, kind of like, this looks a little bit like a thick foil or something, and so this is going on the back wall because there were some smart meters out there. I've also grounded the smart meters with these smart meter guards. They're not expensive, but I had to go through all these things to figure this stuff out. And now it's just smooth running. There's nothing strange about my apartment. It's just like I have this beautiful bed canopy that looks like it protects from mosquitoes and spiders and anything else too, so it's not so bad. And it looks great. Like people, my girlfriend thought I was, she was like, wow, it really looks like it's like a prince is sleeping there or something. But it just has a nice look. It doesn't look bad. And water also slows it down to a certain degree. Water with minerals in it, like there's something about the body fluids and how that slows it down. Like, that's why it comes through at one side, but it does make it through depending on the strength. But it does slow it down. So there's something there, but I'm not going to give you a way to pull that off. I'm just throwing that out there. And so once you stop the 5G here in that way, you can also, do that, like make sure have no Wi-Fi, none of that stuff working through your home anymore. Go cable and all that. Get a landline. Just go back. Take a step back. That's what we're supposed to do anyway. This whole technology is just a phase. We're not supposed to move into Star Wars. It's like we think that, but then we leave nature, and that doesn't work. So don't get that image in your mind. Like that's their image they want you to have. So we'll probably take big step backs. Germany stopped all the Wi-Fi in the schools, the kindergartens, and everything, and they went fiber optic. So going the right way, doing these things right, tempering the sword. That's how you let technology rule it instead of letting it rule you. and becoming conscious of malevolent forces and darkness and those type of things that that are then they're in that darkness and that ignorance that we have allowed. So we have to start paying attention to these areas, and I think some of these crises are forcing us to pay attention. And so that once you have the air and the waves covered to a certain degree and you can protect yourself, I mean, there is like paint that has certain silver materials in it, and it can 3 layers, and you can knock out 80 or 90% there too. There's stuff you can put in front of the windows. There's all sorts of things, and so you can get your sleep cell, at least where you're sleeping chamber, done right. I don't know why I said cell, but anyway, sleep. Yeah, because it's like it's not like a prison, but you have to kind of work it to where it's a positive prison in the sense it protects you. On the other way, so it's like it's keeping you from their prison outside. So it's like it's kind of like the anti-prison, I guess. But anyway, so building that safe space is important. It is. It's a sanctuary, and not only for meditation and prayer and anything else you get into, but just to be at peace. I mean, when you sleep and just your nerves. And I used to work in the other room where I didn't have as much protection, and my meter would go off a little more, and I just started working in here because I don't have that because everything's protected. So anyway, so once you get free of those 2 elements, then your immune system can stabilize. Now here's the 3rd element, which is food. So food, you have to be careful with all the soy-fed food. And it's everywhere. So I order a lot of stuff from Amish farms, and I do a lot of imports. If lamb usually is imported from New Zealand. You can survive off of that, and lamb soup, lamb stock, lamb. You just stay in that world a little bit, and then seafood like herring, things like that you can find. I mean, it's hard to find them not in the right oil with the right oil here. You can go to Russian shops; those are lifesavers, or Persian shops, any like Euro kind of shops, and you can find other items. So you just kind of have to stay out of the USDA standard stuff. You really do, especially the chicken and the meat and all that stuff. You got to find another way. There's stuff out there. I've seen New Zealand steaks. I've seen all sorts of possibilities, or you can order from the Amish and stuff like that online. A lot of times, most of the time, they're not using soy. They'll tell you, or you can look up soy-free, and there's other ways to do this. But you want to get the food right. If you can get the eggs, the milk, the bread, a high-quality milk that just has an amazing taste, and you get the bread right, like these square pack Jewish rye that's not the typical Jewish rye. These are heavy, and they come from Westphalia, Germany. That's the only place they come from, Bavaria, and they usually have a Jewish star on them. So and Whole Foods carries them. So these breads are different than all the other breads, even the ones like this bread that look just like it, even by the same company. So they're made differently, and so if you can get bread and eggs, soy-free eggs, and raised outdoors and stuff like that, and a few basic proteins like Polish ham, or a couple places where you can find these cheaper imported hams or lards or whatever they are, you can get by. You can make it work. And so getting all of that covered for the immune system plus the threefold remedy, you've healed the threefold environment. The air, the water, the water as well, filtered the water, and not even, I buy glass bottled water, and that's it, and from historic sources. And then also the shower. I don't mess with bathing a lot. I shower, but I don't bathe because I don't trust the water. So you'd have to get like not only a home filtration system using a lot of carbon activation, but like you'd also have to have maybe a reverse osmosis whole house type of thing if you want to bathe. That's what I recommend. I don't recommend just bathing based on a typical whole house filter and then like a small osmosis filter just for the kitchen sink. I don't believe in that. I believe it's better to spend $7,000 for a reverse osmosis whole house and do it right with stainless steel, not plastic parts and everything, and you get like a real quality, long-lasting product. So that's out there. They're about $7,000 for a house, for a small house, and I think that's a good price. So get it done right, and that's if you're doing it that way. Otherwise, buy glass bottled water, Aquapanna, whatever kind of thing you can get, and you just double up, triple up. I mean, that kind of stuff can be bought in bulk. You can buy like a year's worth, even if it's a half a bottle a day. One bottle. That's like 180 bottles. I mean, I'm just saying it's not that complicated to have a certain amount easily, and so that could be done. And so once you have water and air, and the waves in the air, which is another feature of the air, not just the particles, then you can step yourself out of it, and you finally get to the zone that we call do no harm in medicine. The first rule of medicine, first do no harm. And so we got to get to that point. Once you're at that point, your immune system can work, even in the worst place on earth. And so that's what's interesting about it. I mean, as long as you have access to these things, okay? So if the access stops, you could go into a fasting mode, or you could maybe just make a lot of things into broth and whatever you can, and you try to go another route. I don't know. Herring, you stay at the lower end, but high nutrition if you can, like lower end as far as price. So so trying to find these solutions, you have to clean the environment. Once the environment's clean, you can live in the middle of the beast, so to speak, and be healthy. And be actually able to recover and move forward. It just takes a lot of spiritual, like was quoted, Steiner said, it takes a lot of spiritual energy to overcome this stuff. And once you can overcome it, there's a possibility to maintain health within something that's completely unhealthy. And there's a beauty there. So that's what I would like to throw in for this whole like coronavirus epidemic madness that we're going through. Because if you can heal your system inside of this, of course, it's hard to do some of these things with all the panic, but if you can get a notion of these things over time, we'll make it out of this epidemic, but there'll be more. And so once you can get these things under control, you'll be less captive by these things, and you'll have a safe space to heal, especially your deep sleep, because that's what these things target. They destroy your deep sleep, and that's, it's like they say they lead to cancer. Well, how does it lead to cancer? It also is through deep sleep. Of course, you could say, well, cellular, water, and it changes the structure of blood, coagulate. Okay, I get that, and that's true. But sleep helps heal a lot of that. So sleep is what's really being destroyed. If you can destroy sleep, at least the quality of sleep, not even quantity. Sometimes people sleep and they just don't get anything back, like as much as they could. And so if you can destroy the quality of it, like what do you call it, deep sleep, then you got it. You got a way to hurt people. And so be careful with this stuff, and get yourself out of it. Get yourself out of the line of fire. The coronavirus thing has a huge potential to be a positive thing. Even though it in of itself is bad, there's a huge potential for this to be a very low death / high transformation event where people wake up, families come together, prayer happens, things change, and people take note of their reality that they had hitherto just like left to every politician and every whatever. And so it's like this can be a powerful game changer and a breath for the world, especially the West, to wake up and challenge these systems and start asking serious questions on vaccines, 5G, and just break through the paradigm. So this is dangerous for the powers that be as well. And I do think in the era of reversals, like Trump or whatever kind of reversals, if you believe in that or not, but there can be some serious reversals here, not only in healthcare, health questions, and politics. Every single zone can have reversals now, huge ones. So there's a good thing that can happen there if we look for, if we can see this same effect that's running through every single sphere now. It started there, and now it's working its way on through. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there for people so they weren't just stuck in an only 5G explanation or an only virus explanation, but a combination explanation that can be very much, once the food is there in a general way, and we've destroyed some of that, very hard in America to get good food, even in a grocery store. They've done very well with like 50, 60 years of the FDA rotating in chairs of Monsanto, and Obama helped contribute to that too through the hiring of his head secretary of agriculture, which was one of the CEOs of Monsanto, or heads. And so anyway, being able to get out of this, see all this stuff clearly, that's the key. I don't think a lot of people were ready to see it because they needed to wake up. They thought, well, we can just, skirt around it, but it isn't going to work. We have to start paying attention to these things and shine the light of our consciousness into this trifecta of darkness that's around us in all these areas. And it's coming only because it's invisible. We're not paying attention to it. We're balking at the investigation of it. And we should start standing on our 2 feet and staring it in the face and not being afraid. and prayer helps with that, and anything else can help you with that. But we have to confront these things, or they continue to destroy us, our families, our children, etc. And they're not the works of God. They're not. They come from the choice of man, and a lot of our karma down here, and a lot of the things that we've piled up. These piled up errors, and so this is and this has a lot to do with us breaking through to the other side and finding wisdom and becoming more free individuals, etc. So it's a positive thing. And I only, somebody said once that Steiner said, that the evil brings you to the good. And that doesn't mean that we want to do evil and then try to get to the good through there or justify evil. We don't. But as an after effect of such evil, that's only tolerated in this whole cosmology because it pushes us towards waking up and realizing that it's time for us to stand up and figure out what's going on. So anyway, hopefully that could be of help to someone, and thanks for listening.